spiritual unfolding isn't just about finding light and feeling amazing. It's a kind of dismantling, and frankly, most folks aren't ready for that kind of ending. You might picture spiritual growth as this incredible instant where suddenly everything clicks and your life is flooded with calm. But that's a daydream. The raw truth is, genuine awakening will completely tear down your current sense of self. It demolishes the fake structures you've lived by, forces your hidden aspects into view, and torches every single comfort zone you've built around yourself. This isn't where tranquility begins. It's the absolute finish line for the person you believed you were. We're about to explore 10 core signs explaining why so many people can't make it through. They pull back, they shut down, they rush back to comforting lies because facing reality stings much more than staying asleep ever did. But if you're someone who values truth more than ease, then you need to hear this. Sign number 1, the you you've always known must disappear. That version of you, the one you're so familiar with, has to be totally taken apart. No compromises, no second thoughts, no deals. Why? Because you simply can't drag the dead weight of your former self into the brightness of a new, higher awareness. The self that was molded by mere survival tactics, by past hurts, by what society drilled into you, by fear, and by your ego. That self is utterly unprepared for the path of deep spiritual honesty. That identity was constructed to shield you, not to liberate you. It became an expert at making others happy, at playing roles, at keeping itself small, at earning praise, and at burying your true core beneath layers of masks and personas. But your soul cannot truly awaken if it's suffocated under all that pretense. And so, awakening necessitates an ending. Not a physical one, but something that feels even more frightening. The death of your ego. Your mind will fight it, resist, grasp, protest, and try to negotiate because that constructed self is the only way it knows how to be. It will scream that letting go means losing absolutely everything: your social standing, your relationships, your identity, your purpose. And in a way, it's correct. You will shed everything that wasn't genuinely yours from the start. But that's the entire point. You're going to feel like you're completely unraveling, like you're going crazy, like you have no idea who you are anymore or what this life is even about. And that very sensation, that's your true initiation. That's the funeral pyre for your false self. It absolutely must happen if you're to be reborn into what is authentic. A caterpillar doesn't transform into a butterfly by trying to grow wings inside its old skin. It dissolves. It becomes unrecognizable. And so will you. There is no spiritual growth without this kind of breakdown. If your journey has been comfortable up to now, you haven't truly begun. Awakening is fierce, not because something is going wrong, but because for once something is going profoundly right. Your soul is pushing through, and your ego is terrified because its reign is ending. But if you find the courage to let that old self be consumed, to allow that identity to fall apart without trying to piece it back together, you will rise again, not as an improved version of your past, but as something new, undefinable, untouchable, and completely free. You don't find your true self by clinging to the person you were. You find it by letting that old version go and listening intently to the quiet that's left behind. That quiet is where your authentic self has been waiting for you all this time. Sign number 2. Your comfort zones become your cages. Comfort, you see, is the silent assassin of your spiritual evolution. It's that tempting whisper that says, just stay here, it's safe, stay with what you know. It tries to pull you back into old habits, relationships, and ways of thinking that no longer help you grow simply because they feel familiar. But understand this, comfort isn't true peace, it's stagnation wearing a cozy disguise. Your soul doesn't expand in pampered environments or predictable situations. It awakens in the intense heat of discomfort, where everything you thought was solid starts to shake, and everything familiar begins to crumble. Most people retreat to what's comfortable because the unknown feels like a kind of death. And in a sense, it is the death of the identity they've held onto so tightly, the beliefs they've revered, and the emotional supports they've leaned on. But real transformation can only occur in the wild, untamed lands beyond your usual boundaries, in the messy middle where certainty shatters and illusions are revealed. It's in those sleepless nights, those spiritual dark spots, the loneliness that echoes loudly, and the raw, unfiltered meetings with your own darker aspects that growth truly ignites. Feeling uncomfortable isn't a penalty, it's a doorway. It's the force that cracks open the hardened shell of your constructed self and compels you to let go. And yet, when that force becomes intense, most will fall back. They return to the relationship they've outgrown, the job that saps their spirit, the belief systems that no longer feel right. Because these things offer a sense of knowing, even if they're harmful. But nothing that's truly alive ever stays static, and your soul is the same. Growth insists that you pick evolution over ease, your deep purpose over fleeting pleasure, and genuine truth over outdated tradition. It insists that you sit with uncertainty without immediately seeking a distraction, that you move through fear without needing a safety net, that you release what you thought you had to have in order to find out who you actually are. Spiritual awakening truly starts when you stop asking, "How can I get through this comfortably?" and instead begin to ask, "What is this unease trying to teach me?" Because every single time you pick comfort instead of growth, you're saying no to your own becoming. But when you lean into that challenging feeling, when you stop seeing pain as an error and start seeing it as your guide, you'll understand that discomfort isn't your foe. It's the very thing that has always been making you real. Comfort shields the ego. Discomfort liberates the soul. Sign number 3, you will part ways with people. And that's just how it goes. One of the most heart-wrenching yet crucial truths of spiritual awakening is that you are going to lose connections with people. And it won't be because you've messed up. It will be because you are no longer the person who fit into the spaces and relationship dynamics you once considered your own. When you change on the inside, when your understanding deepens and your personal values start to match your soul's calling rather than your old programming, your outer world simply cannot remain unchanged. Relationships that were built on your former self will begin to show cracks. This isn't because you stop loving those individuals, but because love founded on illusions cannot survive the light of truth. Friends you used to share laughs with might suddenly feel like distant acquaintances. Family members who once cheered you on may now view you with bewilderment, criticism, or even outright disapproval. They'll remark that you've changed, and they are absolutely right. You are not the same. You're no longer prepared to dim your own brightness to gain acceptance, no longer capable of deceiving yourself just to maintain harmony, and no longer interested in playing roles that stifle your spirit. As painful as this process is, it's not an indicator of failure. It's an indicator of authenticity. It doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're becoming genuine. And the more genuine you become, the more you'll sense the rub between your truth and the identities others expect you to uphold. Some individuals were never truly connected to you. They were connected to your willingness to go along, your agreeableness, your sameness. The instant you start to walk your unique path, you cease to be convenient for those who liked you better when you were quiet, unassuming, or easily influenced. But this kind of loss is sacred. It makes room for soul, deep connections, for relationships that celebrate your truth instead of trying to quash it. It teaches you how to stand on your own, how to rely on your internal guidance even when nobody else gets what you see. And it serves as a reminder that awakening isn't about collecting approval. It's about shedding every single thing that isn't real, and that includes relationships that can't evolve alongside you. You will grieve, you will doubt yourself, but eventually you will recognize that losing people wasn't a disaster. It was a necessary clearing. You weren't left behind, you were set free, you were guided elsewhere. The journey of awakening asks a lot, but the price of staying asleep is your very soul. Let them move on. The right ones will connect with you in your new light. Sign number 4, there's no blueprint for this journey. One of the most bewildering realities of spiritual awakening is that it comes with no instructions, no easy-to-follow plan, no one-size-fits-all schedule, and no assured final stop. And that lack of certainty absolutely terrifies the mind, which is hooked on having control, on predictability, and on clear systems. Your mind longs for guarantees. It wants a to-do list, a detailed map, a guide who can promise, just do these things, and you'll get there. But awakening simply doesn't operate that way. It's not a tidy, straightforward progression. It's messy, it zigs and zags, and it's incredibly personal. What frees one person might feel completely pointless to someone else. What seems like a step forward one day can feel like 2 steps back the next. You'll have moments of sharp insight followed by total bewilderment, intense joy followed by deep sadness, and periods of calm followed by inner tempests. All of this is part of the unfolding. Your mind will want to categorize these shifts as wins or losses, progress or setbacks. But your soul understands differently. This path isn't a direct route. It's more like a spiral, and it frequently takes you into deeper layers before it elevates you. You might find yourself facing the same old emotional hurts over and over. This isn't because you're trapped, but because each time you're peeling away another layer, meeting that pain with greater presence, sharper awareness, and more courage. And this absence of a defined structure, this unfolding without a manual, shatters the mental constructs you've always used to make sense of life. It compels you to release the fantasy that someone else holds all the answers, that there's a perfect method, or that you can master awakening like a subject in school. You can't. This isn't a destination you arrive at through sheer willpower. It's a deep surrender into who you already are beneath all the layers of conditioning. That's why your mind panics. It can't manage what isn't linear. But that's also why your soul expands. Because true freedom was never intended to be discovered within the confines of predictability. The lack of a map isn't a defect in the journey, it's the very element that makes the journey sacred. It demands your trust in the unknown, your faith in the process itself, and a readiness to walk forward without seeing the full path, all while feeling everything intensely. You are not meant to follow another's footsteps. You are here to carve out your own unique way, even if no one else comprehends it, even if you sometimes don't comprehend it yourself. Because awakening isn't about hitting a predetermined goal. It's about becoming radically truthful, profoundly present, and completely alive in a process that you can't control, only yield to. Sign number 5, your own mind becomes a battleground. During a spiritual awakening, one of the most unsettling and often terrifying things you'll experience is the realization that your own thoughts, the very tool you've depended on to get through life, can and will actively work against you. The moment you start to pull back the layers of your conditioned identity and move towards your truth, those inner voices that used to be quiet whispers will rise up and roar. Doubt will scream that you're fooling yourself. Fear will insist you're not safe without the old structures you're letting go of. Shame will sneak in, telling you you're not good enough for this change, that you're flawed, that you'll end up alone. These voices aren't new, they've been there all along, but awakening strips away the distractions that kept them buried. And that's what makes it feel so overwhelming. You're no longer numbing out, dodging them, or unconsciously buying into what they say. Instead, you're sitting in the raw, unfiltered quiet where they sound the loudest. Your mind, especially when it's faced with the collapse of its old self-image, reacts like a trapped creature. It will do absolutely anything to hold on to control. It will stir up chaos, dream up worst-case scenarios, dredge up old wounds, and trap you in cycles of obsessive thinking, all to drag you back to the familiar comfort of being unaware. But here's the twist. This internal chaos isn't a sign you're failing, it's a sign you're progressing. These voices are getting louder because you've disturbed their peace. They don't want to be seen, because being seen means being exposed, and being exposed means being changed. Awakening shines a light on the parts of yourself you've tried to ignore: the harsh inner judge, the hurt inner child, the anxious part of your mind, the piece of you that thinks love has to be earned by suffering. And when you bring your awareness to these parts instead of trying to escape them, you start to take back power over your own inner world. But don't be mistaken, this confrontation is intense. It's not poetic or simple or a straight line. There will be nights you'll question if you're losing it, where it feels like your mind is attacking itself, and the urge to just shut it all down will be incredibly strong. But if you can stay in that fire, if you can listen without buying in, observe without getting stuck, and feel without running away, then something truly amazing happens. Your mind starts to settle, not because you've beaten it, but because it has been seen with understanding. And that's where the real shift starts, not by trying to silence your mind, but by no longer letting it rule you. Sign number 6, solitude isn't a byproduct, it's essential. Being alone isn't some unfortunate side effect of your spiritual journey, it's a core requirement, the very place where the deepest work happens. You won't truly awaken surrounded by a crowd, because awakening needs a level of closeness with yourself that just can't happen when you're constantly bombarded by noise, distractions, or what others expect from you. In solitude, all the performing stops. There's no one left to impress, no one to give you validation, no one to save you from looking at your own reflection. And while that kind of quiet can feel almost unbearable at first, it's in those still, stripped-back moments when no one is watching, when no one is telling you you're good enough, that you finally meet the truth of who you are. Not the person you acted like, not who the world told you to be, but the raw, unedited being beneath all those stories. And yes, it can feel lonely, incredibly, etchingly lonely, because when you start to pull away from the outside world, you realize just how much of your identity was tied up in relationships, roles, social approval, and general busyness. But in that seeming emptiness, something incredible occurs. Your soul begins to speak. In the quiet, you start to hear the gentle whispers of your own truth, the hidden pain you've been avoiding, the deep desires you silenced to fit in. Solitude acts like a mirror that tells no lies. It shows you your shadows and your light. It reveals where you're still putting on an act and where you're finally starting to live from an honest place. And that's where real change takes root. Not on a public stage, not through group agreement, not in the echo of others' opinions, but by yourself in stillness, deep within your own presence. The reason so many people dread solitude is because they mix up being alone with being abandoned. But the further you go into this, the more you'll see that solitude isn't empty. It's full of clarity, full of presence, full of wisdom. It strips away everything that's not real so you can stand, maybe for the very first time, without needing the world to tell you who you are. You find out that your connection to yourself, to the divine, to something bigger, doesn't need an audience. It needs your willingness to just be with what is. And in that sacred quiet, where you're no longer performing but simply existing, awakening doesn't just start, it becomes unavoidable. Sign number 7, you have to deconstruct your beliefs. Spiritual awakening isn't about collecting more information. It's an undoing, a letting go, a radical process of unlearning almost everything you thought was true. We've been trained to think that the way to truth is by adding more knowledge, more techniques, more books, more spiritual sounding words. But genuine awakening isn't about piling new truths on top of old falsehoods. It's about stripping away everything until only what's truly real is left. It's about unlearning the ideas you picked up from your family, your society, your upbringing, your past hurts, the narratives that told you who you were meant to be, what life should be like, and what makes you worthy of love. Awakening insists that you question absolutely everything, even the things that once brought you comfort and a sense of self. It asks you to release labels, doctrines, accomplishments, and social roles, not because they are bad in themselves, but because you've started to believe they are you. And so, this process feels like demolition. It's the taking apart of the mental framework you built your entire life on. Your ego will freak out because it sees unlearning as losing something. But what you're actually losing are illusions. You weren't born flawed or lacking, you were born complete. But from the moment you arrived, you were taught the opposite, taught to crave approval, to dread failure, to look for happiness outside yourself, to perceive separation where there is actually connection. Awakening is the slow, often difficult peeling away of all those layers of untruth. It's realizing that many of your thoughts don't even belong to you. They are echoes of systems, survival strategies, and outdated beliefs handed down through generations. And this unlearning isn't glamorous. There's no round of applause, no external praise, just a profound unraveling that often makes you feel like you know far less now than you ever did. But that emptiness, that state of not knowing, is where truth begins. Because when you let go of what you were conditioned to accept, you create room for what your soul has intrinsically always known. You don't awaken by becoming more. You awaken by becoming less of who you were told to be and more of who you genuinely are. Truth doesn't need to be learned from scratch. It needs to be uncovered. And that uncovering can only happen when you're brave enough to unlearn it all, to stand unadorned in your own being, and to trust that what remains after the illusions crumble isn't nothingness, but pure freedom. Sign number 8, the urge to numb will be strong, but presence is key. When the ache of spiritual awakening surfaces, and it often will, without any warning, your first instinct will be to bolt. You'll desperately want a distraction, some comfort, anything at all to pull you away from that raw feeling. You'll find yourself reaching for your old coping mechanisms, endless scrolling, comfort food, overworking, alcohol, staying busy, or those relationships that always kept you from feeling things too deeply. This isn't because you're weak, it's because numbing has been your go-to survival tool for years, possibly your entire life. You were never shown how to simply sit with your pain, only how to manage it, hide it, analyze it away, or push it down. So when grief, fear, shame, or anger surge up with full intensity during awakening, your nervous system screams for an escape route, and your mind frantically searches for an exit. But the real unshakable truth is that being present is the only path through it. Presence doesn't try to judge the pain or fix it. It simply makes space for it. It holds a container for the messy, chaotic, uncomfortable parts of you that are coming up, not to punish you, but so they can be integrated and finally released. Numbing only postpones the process, makes the suffering last longer, and keeps those wounds buried and infected. But presence, that brave act of staying with yourself right in the middle of discomfort, is both the remedy and the mirror. It's the remedy because it allows healing to start right where the pain originated, in your nervous system, in your subconscious mind, in your body. And it's the mirror because it shows you what the pain is trying to tell you, where you've abandoned parts of yourself, where you're still holding on to stories of unworthiness, where your fear has been secretly calling the shots. Most people never fully awaken because they refuse to truly feel. But awakening isn't an idea to be understood, it's an experience to be lived. And presence is your way in. It means sitting in the fire without pulling back, breathing through the soreness without trying to escape, and watching the storm inside you without demanding it stop on your schedule. And when you genuinely stay with it, you realize the pain was never your adversary. It was your invitation. It came up not to break you, but to show you where your soul was still caught in old narratives. So, when that craving to numb hits, just pause, take a breath, feel into it, and remember, the pain isn't asking to be solved. It's asking to be seen. Sign number 9, you'll grasp that control was an illusion. One of the most humbling and often shocking discoveries during a spiritual awakening is hitting the realization that you were never actually in control. Not of your life's direction, not of your situations, not even of your own unique path. For years, maybe your whole adult life, you operated under the mistaken belief that if you just put in enough effort, planned meticulously, managed every tiny detail, and dictated every outcome, you could construct a life that was predictable, secure, and perfectly ordered. But awakening shatters that mistaken belief like fragile glass, leaving you standing face to face with the enormous, wild unknown and the terrifying, yet beautiful act of surrender. Because surrender isn't about giving up, as your ego wants you to think. It's not a sign of weakness or defeat. It is the only real gateway to genuine peace. As you awaken, you start to see just how much of your past suffering stemmed from your frantic efforts to control things that were never meant to be under your command, how other people perceive you, how your relationships develop, how the future unfolds, how the universe delivers what you believe you require. You see how desperately clinging to control was a defense mechanism born out of fear, out of past trauma, out of the deep-seated belief that if you weren't constantly steering the ship, everything would inevitably crash. But the deeper you venture into this, the more you understand that life was never waiting for you to seize control. It was patiently waiting for you to let go, to loosen your tight grip on the story, on the results, on the identity you carefully built around knowing what was supposed to happen next. True surrender doesn't mean you stop participating in life. It means you stop trying to force things that aren't flowing naturally. It means you begin to trust the deeper intelligence that has been guiding your life all along, even when you were completely unaware of it. It means you learn to ride the unpredictable waves instead of trying to command the entire ocean. And yes, releasing control feels absolutely terrifying initially. It feels like a death to the ego because, in many respects, it truly is. But on the other side of that surrender lies freedom. Real, authentic freedom. The kind that doesn't rely on flawless plans or perfect external conditions. The kind that allows you to breathe more deeply, live more gently, and move with a sense of grace even when you don't know what's coming. You were never actually driving. You were never meant to. And when you finally stop white-knuckling the steering wheel and allow life to unfold through you, not because of you, you discover what control could never ever offer you: peace, true alignment, and the quiet certain knowing that everything is happening precisely as it should. Sign number 10, the pain point is where most people give up. The vast majority of people, when they come up against the intense pain of awakening, stop right there, at that critical edge. They catch a fleeting glimpse of something true, a spark of something deeper, something undeniably real, and then they turn back. Not because they don't truly desire to awaken, but because they never anticipated the process would be this incredibly painful. They imagined awakening would feel like pure joy, not like being torn apart from the inside. But the unvarnished truth is, awakening is an ending long before it's a new beginning. It incinerates everything that's false: the masks you wear, the roles you play, the attachments you cling to, the identities you've adopted just to survive. And that burning, emotional, psychological, sometimes even physical, feels like far too much for most to bear. So they retreat, back to the distractions, back to the comfort, back to the noise, back to the numbness, back to sleep. But those who are brave enough to keep going, those who don't run from the fire, but walk directly through it, they find something far more profound than temporary happiness. They discover true liberation, because on the other side of that pain isn't just a better version of your old existence. It's the end of the illusion that you ever needed that old life to feel complete in the first place. Liberation isn't about escaping your suffering, it's about no longer being imprisoned by it. It's the kind of freedom that arrives when you stop battling reality, when you stop needing circumstances to be different for you to feel at peace. But to reach that place, you must be willing to sit in the darkness long enough for your inner vision to clear. You have to face the grief, the shame, the fear, the disillusionment, not as foes to be defeated, but as guides leading you back to your authentic truth. Pain is not the end of your path, it's the very start of your awakening. And if you learn to trust it, if you surrender to it without flinching, it becomes your greatest teacher, your purifier, your way through. Most people never arrive at this point because they believe pain signals that something is terribly wrong. But in the journey of awakening, Pain often means something is finally being seen clearly, and to see with clarity, to see without the distortions of ego and fear, is the most liberating experience a human can ever have. So yes, the fire is absolutely real. It will burn away everything that isn't truly you. But let it. Because what's left when the smoke finally clears is not just truth. It is the unshakable peace of finally, truly, coming home to yourself.